Welcome to the Omnibus Show, a program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. And now your host, Dave Gibbs.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Omnibus Show, the program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. Today's guest is Wayne Powers. He is an omnibus entertainer. He's a singer, actor, voiceover artist, etc., etc. Talk show host.
Mostly etc.
Etc. Welcome.
Specialize in the etc. part.
Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here
well,
today.
my pleasure, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, fabulous. We talked about so much. We've got so much to talk about. And I'd like to just go right into the show about what got you in entertainment?
What got me into entertainment? Well, I don't remember a time when I wasn't involved in that. I mean, when I was a little boy, we had an old garage that you couldn't access with a car anymore. Mm-hmm. And I would hang sheets and stuff and put on shows for the neighborhood and charge a penny, 2 cents to come and see shows there. And they were, ridiculous little silly shows, but I would do that. My father used to sing around the house all the time, and I loved the music he played and sang. And I remember, this is kind of weird, but I remember one moment, it's kind of an important moment, I guess. I was downstairs in the cellar. We didn't have a lot of money, so we lived in this really crackerbox little house, but it had a cellar, not a basement, a cellar.
Yes.
And I'm down in the cellar, and my father had an old army table, and I had my little Gilbert chemistry set. Remember those? So I had the test tubes and the litmus paper and all this stuff, and I'm there and I'm mixing stuff, and I'm all involved in in this experiment, and my dad comes down the cellar stairs and he's watching me for a while, and I love my dad, but he's watching me, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm conducting an experiment, and I'm mixing the tannic acid with the, And he said, "Well, what are you trying to prove?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what happens when you mix some of this with some of that, and then you heat it up with the Bunsen burner." And he says, "No, that's not it." He said, the chemistry set I bought you has a book, and you can conduct experiments. You can test for acidity or alkaline, and then I wasn't interested in doing any of that. And I just wanted to mix stuff up and see if it bubbled.
See what happened.
Well, and I realized at that early age, it must have been like around 7, I realized at that early age that I didn't want to be a chemist, but I wanted to act like a chemist. And so, that led me to a career of being an actor. Mm-hmm. At that very early age, I realized that I want to be a chemist today, and tomorrow I could be a lawyer, and the next day I could be a policeman, and I can... And, your show is called Omnibus.
Yeah.
Interested in all things. Well, on my website, there's a quote that referred to me, and it says, "It's a very fine line that divides a Renaissance man and a dilettante." But I'm interested in everything. I love people, and I love history. I have a lot of interests. And all of those interests, I have a degree in history and political science. I'm an entertainer. And I've always been an entertainer.
You are a Renaissance man.
Well, I don't know about that, but I know that I have a wide array of interests. People of all kinds interest me. History of all kinds, the world interests me. I'm a very interested person. And I'm sorry that I only have one lifetime, unless you believe in reincarnation, because I'd love to spend a lifetime doing each of these things that I'm interested in.
Sure.
You know.
Well, I always say if I could bifurcate myself, I'd do this and that.
Yeah. Well, but I do 2. That's on Tuesday. Now Wednesday I got two more.
Well, that's great. So, I remember going through that phase as a child. Always, this week I'd want to be that way, and that week I wanted to be...
That's water.
That's water.
This is a nightclub. I thought maybe you just ran short of olives or something.
Sorry, we could get some olives. If you want.
No, it's all
Michael,
right.
do you have any olives? And I remember my mom was in bed. I just watched the downhill Olympics from Europe and the downhill race when I was a kid. And I remember going into, my mom was sleeping, and I said, "Mom," I'm standing at her door, and I'm going, "I want to be a downhill racer." Didn't last very long in Indiana, you know. So I went through that and went through different stages of interest. But yeah, no, that's great. You have
Well,
all
and my
those
dad
interests.
was my idol. I mean, truly my idol. He died in my arms in 1976, so it's been a long time. But he's very much alive within me. Always has been. And he was a great man, a good man, you know. And I wish there were more people like him, but I've never met anyone quite like him. And I'm an only child, and so he was really my role model, my mentor, and my best friend, my buddy growing up. I really adored him and still do. But he did two things. He worked all the time. He was only around the house on Sundays. And Sundays he would he played his music. And we were the first people to have a stereo system because he was a TV repairman. So he built a stereo system. My mother hated it. It's a dust collector. Get that crap out of here. It's all dust collectors. So he put his components that he built on the floor of the living room coat closet. So I spent most of my youth with my head inside the coat closet of the living room, listening to records, because he would play his records, and he listened every Sunday. He would sing along with them. He had a beautiful voice. He would sing to Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole.
Oh,
Two all-time greats.
Yeah, all-time
What great,
greats.
exquisite taste. And he sang like them. And so I grew up with that music. So, you know, while my friends were listening to Moby Grape, you know, I was listening to that too, the Beatles and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I was also listening to this. And my father sang with that. So when I was alone in the house with Latchkey Kid, I'd put on the records and I would sing to those records.
Sure.
To emulate my father.
Yeah.
And because he was my role model. And the other thing he did was he told the corniest jokes. He always had some joke to tell. And they were corny as heck, but he always got laughs with them.
Of course.
And he always brought joy to people by telling them. He was a fun guy. And so I learned my love of comedy and my love of music from my father. And those things are very much alive inside of me today. I mean, it caused me, I had a career in comedy. I have a career in music. They're all from my dad,
That's amazing.
you know.
It's great when the influence is that close to you.
Well, you know, I was very fortunate to have had him in my life, really.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I can testify my dad was great too, but he didn't sing. And he wasn't an omnibus personality, but he had great character, and he was good with people, and he's very good with the whole news thing.
Yeah.
And so, but having a dad like that must have been just fabulous.
Well, he was not around very much,
Yeah.
so I've treasured the time,
what time
with
you
him.
had with him.
But he was a TV repairman. He never finished high school.
Yeah.
He taught electronics in the Army during World War II. He was in Okinawa,
Wow.
and you know, he was left there. You know, in Okinawa, one of the guys that was left there.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, living in a cave, and all they had to eat was water and hardtack. You know, which was, you know, like a piece of wood.
Basically.
Yeah, and cold bean rations. You couldn't heat it because you couldn't start a fire because
Sure.
the enemy would see the
Would see
the
where
smoke.
you're at,
Exactly.
that type of thing.
So all he lived on cold bean rations, hardtack, and water.
Wow.
And he made a promise to himself that if he ever got out of there alive, he would never eat another bean as long as he lived. And all growing up, we never had beans in our house.
I understand.
And you know, and a kid, you know, Franks and beans. All the kids are having Franks and beans. So I would go to my friend's house to have Franks and beans. Well, you know, we because it wasn't allowed in our house.
Yeah.
And my mother acquiesced to that. You know,
Sure.
and I understood why. You know, amazing. But he had he would buy individual copies of Scientific American This is a man who did not have a high school education. And he would read them. And I, for Father's Day, I'd say, well, I'm going to get you a subscription. No, I don't want a subscription. I can't read them that quickly. It takes me a lot of time. But he built a ruby laser, in the basement of our home in the 1960s.
Wow.
He built a laser from his knowledge, Scientific American, his knowledge of electronics and whatever. He was fascinating, a guy. We had stereo before anybody had stereo. Pardon me. And we would have people come over the house because, he was a TV repairman. So we had the stereo demonstration albums on vinyl, and they were the albums you would play in a store. Mm-hmm. And it would be, a guy walking from one speaker to the other. Because people go, stereo, what's that? What, 2 speakers? What is it, louder? What are 2 speakers?
Because people were used to mono.
They had no idea. You had to experience stereo.
Sure.
So that's why they had these demonstration records, and there would be a guy walking from one speaker to the next and tell you, here I am over here, and now I'm over here. There'd be a train going by. There'd be an orchestra, a big symphony orchestra, and all the different instrumentation would be separated. But that whole concept of separation of sound into 2 channels was something that people did not get until you experienced it.
Correct.
So we had people coming over our house to experience stereo.
That's great.
And I'd be, ooh, wow, he's like he's over there now. He's over here. It was amazing. The same thing with color television. We had a color television before anybody did.
Yeah.
That I knew. And people would come over to our house because there were very few shows in color. Perry Como was on in color. So people come over to watch Perry Como in a red sweater. And that Peacock, the NBC Peacock, would open up, and that all the different colors would come out, and there would be oohs and ahs from people in our living room. And, and there were 8,000 tint, and, you had to adjust all these buttons to get the color right.
Yeah.
So Perry didn't have a green skin, you got to...
Yeah, exactly. I remember that. I remember, here's something for you. The station where Dad worked at, WMAQ TV in Chicago, was the first station in the world to have color television. Although that was back in 1949.
Yeah, 1949, yeah.
Not a lot of color sets back then.
Well, there were not a lot of sets there. Texaco Star Theater with Milton Berle was 1948. Mm-hmm. And that was, people would gather in TV store windows, in front of TV store windows to watch Milton Berle because you didn't have a television. But you could watch, I Love Lucy. You could watch, when Lucy had the baby. You could watch, and people would gather in front of TV stores to watch through the shop window.
It's amazing.
There are generations growing up that have no idea what that was like.
Sure.
And that's why we're talking about it.
Exactly. Well, talking about TV yourself, that you have had quite a career.
I'm still having it.
You're still having it.
I'm not done yet.
I'm not done yet. You started out as the cop in Laverne and Shirley.
On network television, yeah.
On network
TV. Before that, I did local TV and regional TV and stuff like that. But my first network television show was Laverne and Shirley, and I got that without an audition.
You did?
Crazy story, yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, tell us the story.
Well, I was, Joel Zwick was a director in New York who I knew, and he had just come out to Los Angeles. And I had met with him because we went to see an improv comedy. I was doing an improv comedy show with Robin Williams at the time, before either one of us had been discovered.
That's right. And you survived.
Yes, I did. I think I did. Yeah, I'm still here. So, so we were at a comedy, and I got to see Joel Zwick, and Peter Riegert was in the show and stuff, and we all went out for pizza afterwards. And Bobby Hoffman was the casting director over at Paramount. He cast Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, all those shows, the Paramount shows. And he was a fan of mine from this off-the-wall show that I was doing, improv comedy show. He loved my work, but I hadn't gotten a job yet. And so the guy that was playing the cop on Laverne and Shirley, Bo Capral, left the show for whatever reason. And they had a script that they had to do with the cop in it. So they needed a new cop. So they're around the table, and the casting director, and Joel Zwick had just been hired to direct this episode, his first episode. And so Joel Zwick directed My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and
yes,
a great director. He also directed so many television shows. So they said, we need a cop. And Bobby said, well, I got a guy, Wayne Powers. And Joel said, Wayne Powers, I know him, hire him. That was it.
That's great.
I never even auditioned. And then they brought me back the very next week. So, crazy, that kind of stuff, I don't know if that could ever happen today, but it did then.
Yeah.
And that was the launch of my network television career.
Yeah, and that's quite a show. It is quite a...
At that time, it was either number 1 or number 2 in the ratings every week.
Every week.
People don't realize that. It's 1978. It was the number 1 show or number 2. Sometimes Happy Days edged us out. Sometimes we edged out Happy Days. But those were the two, number 1, number 2 shows, 1978.
Yeah.
People don't realize, how big that show really was.
It was huge.
Yeah, huge.
I remember that.
And the girls were awesome, and it was an amazing experience, because that's done in front of a live audience.
Oh, yeah.
And that was Paramount Studios, so that was done on 35 millimeter film. That was not on videotape. Mm-hmm. We had a cinematographer. It was at the old RKO Studios, which was Paramount in those days. Mm-hmm. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, it really was. Really quite an experience.
Well, you've done amazing. You've had that. You've had One Day at a Time, Murder, She Wrote, which was my mom's favorite TV
I love that show. And Angela Lansbury, what a sweetheart. I got her, because I love comedy. I got her to do this little physical shtick with me, this little physical joke with me, as I played a stage manager, assistant stage, first AD, assistant director in a film thing, and she's on the set, and the director wants the set cleared, so I got to get her out of there. So I'm trying to usher her out, and I said, it would be great if you caught if I get you rattled, and you caught your purse on the chair, and I got to. So she said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So we did that. So I got Angela Lansbury to do some physical slapstick
comedy.
Right, crazy.
A little Cary Grant physical comedy.
It was
comedy
great because she was wonderful. What a great actress, and it was very privileged to have worked with her.
Yeah. What is the career has it been? And
I worked with a lot of people. Danny Thomas.
Worked with lots of people.
Oh my gosh, I worked with so many greats.
He's classic.
And Paul Sorvino, who was, my dearest friend. Paul Sorvino from Goodfellas was probably my dearest friend and my mentor. I worked with him in film. I worked with him on stage. He brought me to New York. We did King Lear together in New York.
Amazing. That's quite a.
Oh my gosh!
Breadth of.
Well, he conned me into it, but because he was playing Lear, and we had a short rehearsal time, and he said to me, "I want you to do this for me," and I said, "I can't play Shakespeare. I haven't done Shakespeare since I was in college, Paul. I can't." He said, "No, you can. I want you to play the fool opposite my Lear, and I'm directing it, and I'm playing Lear." And I said, "But Paul, I can't." He said, "No." He said, "Well, don't worry about the language. You'll get the language. It's just iambic pentameter. You'll get it." He said, "But what's important is the relationship between Lear and the fool has to be extremely deep." He said, "And we have a short rehearsal time, and you and I already have that relationship, so we can cash in on that, and just and put that to work." So I got him to do me a favor. And I did that favor for him, and I had a ball. It was not really a favor. I mean, he was doing me a privilege,
Yeah, that's wonderful.
But he taught me to sing a song in Italian, because he had the most beautiful Italian dialect. And my mother was turning 90. My mother was 100% Italian. And at 90, what do you get your mother? She had enough Estee Lauder to fill a closet. I mean, she had flowers she didn't want because they die. Plants she didn't want because you got to water them. Candy she didn't know she didn't have a sweet tooth. What are you going to get her, an eggplant? I mean, So jewelry she didn't wear a lot of jewelry. So I said, there was a song. My mother's mother died when my mother was 12 years old. So she grew up really without a mother. and the middle of 5 children. And she had to leave school and help support the family and all that sort of stuff during the Depression. And so the word mother to her was a very sacred word. It's like saying God when you said mother to my mother. And there's an Italian song called Mamma that whenever, Jerry Vale would sing it or Jimmy Rosselli my mother would cry. And it was her favorite song. But it was in Italian. Now, I don't speak Italian, like Jack Parr, it's like arrivederci, but that's no way to open a conversation.
Sure.
So I wanted to learn this song in Italian. I said, I'm going to serenade my mother for her 90th birthday.
Oh, that's great.
So I said, Paul, you have to work with me. I need to learn this song in Italian and sing it, and it's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. So he worked with me on it, and that was his payback for me doing Lear. And do I have time to tell this story?
Please do.
Okay. So this is in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I had my mother. Pardon me. And a friend of mine has a great restaurant, Luce, in Charlotte. Upscale Italian restaurant, exquisite. Fine dining at its best. Authentic. Everybody who works in the restaurant's from Italy, even the busboys. Everybody in the kitchen, from Italy. There's no locals there. There's nobody there from, Tijuana, coming. No, everybody's from Italy. And so I said, I'm bringing my mother here for her 90th birthday dinner. And I said, please, can afterwards, if you wouldn't mind, would it be all right if you turn the music down? I'm going to stand up and I'm going to serenade my mother with this song in Italian. He said, Wayne, perfect. Absolutely. So we arranged it. So we have dinner. And it was exquisite. The squid ink pasta. And everything was just course after course, magnificent. And we finished dinner. I gave her card. Now, she loves cards,
Sure.
So she read her card. Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful. And then I stand up. The music comes down, and I stand up, and I sing. Mama son tanto felice, and I'm singing in Italian. This incredible song about a mother. The waiters are coming up with tears. I sit down. I look at my mother. There's a long pause, and she says, so we're going to have coffee or what? I was stunned. She didn't even acknowledge it.
Really?
I spent months working on this thing. I thought it was the greatest gift a son could give his mother.
Yeah.
Didn't even acknowledge it. We're going to have coffee or what? So I didn't. The meantime, the waiters are coming up to me from Italy in tears,
right,
talking to me in Italian. And I go, non parlo italiano, I don't speak. He says, no, you can't fool me. No. I heard you. So I let it go.
Yeah.
Months later, I'm on the phone. And my mother was elderly. She had the hearing aids and all. And you could tell when someone is in a receptive mood. So I'm on the phone with her, and she was in a receptive mood. And I said, Mama, I have to ask you a question. She said, what is it, Wayne? I said, you remember your birthday? It took you to Luce? Oh, yeah, it was wonderful, fantastic. Wonderful dinner. I said, Mary, we had a great, yeah, it was terrific. Remember, and then after dinner, I gave you, your, oh, yeah, the card. It's still on the TV. I got it on top of the TV set. I said, and then after that, you remember the song Mama? She said, yeah. And I said, I sang that for you, and you didn't even acknowledge it. And I thought it was your favorite song. There's a long pause. She said, that was you? I said, what do you mean that was me? Of course it was me. I sang for you. She said, I thought you were just moving your lips and it was the music. It was. I said, no, it was me. It took me months. Paul helped me learn this in Italian with a perfect dialect. And long pause. Sing it again. So on the phone, I'm singing it again. Mama son tanto felice. I'm singing this song in Italian. I finished the song. My mother is sobbing. She says, this is the most beautiful thing I ever heard in my life. I couldn't believe it. It took all those months. She didn't realize it was me singing.
Wow.
And maybe her hearing aid was turned down or something.
Sure.
In the meantime, I'm mortified. I thought this great thing I had planned was a total flop.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful, rousing success. but we didn't realize it.
It was so good.
It was a delayed
A
reaction.
delayed reaction because it was so good.
But that's, that's...
She thought it was the
Yeah.
voiceover.
Yeah, she thought that was just lip syncing.
Yeah.
Like Milli Vanilli.
Well, you got that connection with Mom.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's a wonderful. What a gift.
Well, I was very blessed. My father really supported me in my vocation, my choice in music and in performance and stuff. My mother didn't understand any of it.
Sure.
She had no understanding of it. Get a civil service job. You'll get benefits. You got to work with the garbage truck. You can work at the village in the garbage truck. You'll have benefits. You can retire. Mom, I don't want to do that. I got something else I want to do. I did an episode of, I used to do one episode of Simon and Simon. Remember that show?
Yes.
One episode a season I usually did. And I played this character called Shaky Jake. And the concept was the boys had to get this briefcase out of the hotel safe that someone had left there, one of the guests, to get evidence or something. And so they had to get into the hotel safe. Well, how are they going to do that? So they realized that the night shift guy at the front desk was known as Shaky Jake. So they were going to fake this heart attack, and while he's off getting some water or something, you could run in, go to the safe, get the briefcase, get the whatever's out of the briefcase. So it was a con job.
Sure.
So their idea was they had to rattle me, and this is an easily rattled guy. It's kind of like Don Knotts. It was just easily shaken up. And so I played this character, and it was a great scene, and we had a great time. And, I phoned back to New York, Mom, I'm going to be on Simon and Simon, tomorrow night. Be sure to watch. So you always want that approval from your parents. My father had already passed away. And so I call her up, after the show's on the air. Did you see it? Did you see it? Yeah, I don't know why you want to do this acting thing. I don't think it's right for you. What? Yeah, I watched the show. You look very nervous. I just gave up. I just said, you know what? I'm looking for approval in the wrong places here.
That's hilarious. Well, to conclude, there's great stories. To conclude this chapter, you had your own show on 13 East. Can you tell us a bit
13
about
East, yeah, 2 seasons. It was a hospital sitcom on Saturday nights. They moved us around a little bit, but we were on just before Golden Girls on Saturday nights. Won our time slot every week, I think, except one. And then we were canceled by NBC because of a changing of the guard at the head of the network. And Brandon Tartikoff loved our show, and we were his baby. But Scoey Mitchell, the African-American comedian, was a trailblazer as a comedian on camera, was also a trailblazer off camera because he produced, directed, owned shows and whatever. And this is one of the series I did with him. He was a very dear friend. He just passed away about a year or two ago. But I did a couple of different series with him. And this was one of them. And it was a great show. It was a lot of fun. And he gave me a lot of green light. I gained 68 pounds on purpose to play this character.
Wow, that's a lot of pasta.
Yeah, a lot of ice cream, a lot of, double chili cheeseburgers at 3 a.m. with malted milks and sidecars of, ice cream on top, whatever it took to gain that weight. And the reason I did it was the concept of the show it took place in a hospital. It was a hospital ward, 13 East, Ward 13 East.
Yeah.
And the head nurse was a heavy-set woman, Diana Bellamy, who was a wonderful actress. And I was the hospital administrator, the bad guy, the sitcom villain. So we knew 2 things about this character when I took the job. We knew he was a cheapskate, notorious cheapskate, and we knew he made fat jokes about the head nurse. And I said, okay. I said, but, she's a big woman. I said, this is not funny. This is just mean. No, we're going to have it. They wouldn't change it. So I said, okay. I'm already signed to do the thing. I tried to talk him out of it. They would not change it. The fat jokes are in. So I said to myself, look, there's only one way to make these funny. If he's fat, then when him making a fat joke, he's making a fool of himself, not of her. And so then it becomes funny. It's not hurtful because you realize this guy's an idiot. So,
I get it.
This guy's a jerk. So that's what I did. And then, you could hold yourself, so you look heavier than you are, and I gained a lot of weight and played this character. And we had a great time doing it. And they gave me a lot of green light. I added a lot of physical comedy, a la Laverne Shirley, which was, it was not supposed to be in there, but there was a whole running gag of me running into an elevator door. It was like I'd be going to the elevator and they would distract me because I was being such a jerk. They would purposely distract me. I'd turn around and deal with them. In the meantime, the elevator door closed and I walk and I bang right into the elevator door. Well, that always got 3 laughs because, and I learned that from Jackie Gleason, get 3 laughs with every joke. It got an anticipatory laugh because you saw what was going to happen.
Yeah.
You knew it was going to happen. So you start laughing then. Then there's a laugh when it actually happened. There's that laugh. And then there's a laugh at the reaction when it happens. So it's 3 laughs with 1 joke. I said, that's golden. You're not going to turn this down, Scully. So I said, let me show it to you. So I did, and the crew laughed, everybody broke up, and it became a running gag.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
It was great fun, 13 East. And unfortunately, those shows are all gone. On YouTube, you can see a few scenes that still exist, and those are from my own VHS tapes that we took off the air.
Oh, okay.
But all the masters were lost.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And here I am, an archivist. I'm a comedy historian. I've spent my life preserving the work of others. And here my own work is lost. How ironic is that?
That's ironic.
Yeah. But there's a few scenes. You can go on YouTube and see a few scenes.
Okay.
That are still there.
Well,
13 East.
We will look for that and post that in the description.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, good stuff, Plus, I'm going to be right here at Feinstein's on July 22nd. I can't wait for that.
Well, we look forward to that.
Yeah.
For sure.
You better be here.
I will.
All right, I'll be looking for you.
Hey, you. Well, thank you, Wayne. Well, let me do that over. I spaced too long.
Well, let me do it. We'll be back here with me, Wayne Powers, right after this word on Chapter 2 coming up.
That's great. Can we do that? Let's do that.
All right.
That's great. I love it. Welcome back to the Omnibus Show, and here we are in Chapter 2 with Wayne Powers. And in this chapter, I'm really interested in learning about your archiving and about music. But starting with the archiving, you've got this fascinating...
I'm a chronic collector.
Okay.
I collect everything. And a lot of it is because, not that I'm so materially based, I'm really not, but so much is disposed of. We live in a disposable society, from disposable razors to disposable, books. You go to a library, there are a lot of the books are gone now, and it's all on video and all on screen. I don't like that. I want a book. So everything gets disposable. Now we're even into disposable people. Our culture is very disposable, and I am the antithesis of that. I have the same accountant that I've had for 100 years. I'm a very loyal person. I like the same people around me, and I just resent the disposability because, especially when you get to the arts, film, television, all that sort of stuff, music. Art is meant to be preserved, and because future generations need to benefit from it. And that includes architecture. Right now I'm living in a 1902 Victorian mansion that we restored.
Wow.
Because it was in danger of getting to a point of neglect. And somebody had to restore it. And, it wound up being us, okay? But it's a labor of love. And so I've collected comedy film, And my love of comedy is, and my love of music. I have a lot of 78s, which are before LPs and vinyl. I have, a lot of 16 millimeter film. Rare stuff, because every time the medium evolves, let's say in music, you go from 78s to 33 1/3 to 45s, discs, to cassettes or 8-track tapes, and then you go to CDs, and now you're off of CDs into MP3s and whatever. But every time the medium evolves, not everything makes the transition. A lot of stuff is left behind. And I'm saying, wait a minute. There are more great silent comedians than Charlie Chaplin. So Chaplin was great. Keaton was great, but there were other ones. So the one I became enamored with was Harry Langdon, who you probably have never heard of. But Harry Langdon was the fourth great silent comedian. So I helped with his a book about him, the first book ever written really about him, as a labor of love. I've collected his stuff. I used to spend my rent money, when I was growing up, a young man, my lunch money in college, my, whatever, to buy stuff because I was fearful that it would be destroyed or lost. And so I've just built up these archives, and I've donated a lot of stuff through the years and whatever, but music is the same way. I did a 1920s nightclub act in St. Louis.
Wow.
With a 1920s band. We had all original instrumentation, C melody sax and all the stuff. Try to find a C melody sax that hasn't been turned into a lamp. It's hard to do, but we had all original instrumentation.
Wow.
We built this incredible nightclub in a hotel, not unlike Feinstein's here, at Hotel Carmichael. We did this in St. Louis for Don Breckenridge, who was a hotelier in St. Louis at the time, and we put together this 1920s speakeasy, where you had to go through a fake flower shop to get in. And you walked in, and it was suddenly, there was a chorus line of flapper girls, and I did the show, and we had a band, and there was all the drinks were served in coffee mugs in case there was a raid, and all that kind of stuff. It was really done authentically and a lot of fun. But so a lot of that music, original arrangements. We did original arrangements. One of the guys in the band raided the basement of the Hunlith Music, which was the oldest music store in St. Louis. It's gone now. Yeah. But as they were going out of business, went down to the basement, found all these original arrangements from the hot jazz 1920s bands of the era were all down in the basement. So bought them all, and used them, brought them back to life.
Yeah.
And but otherwise they would have been gone. They would have just been tossed or whatever. And so, we can, as generations go on, new is not necessarily better. New can be better, but new is an alternative. So we should have new things, but not dispose of all the old. Have the old, your legacy, preserve your legacy, and then you can pick and choose from it, but have it be available for you to pick and choose from. You may not want to be involved with it, you may not enjoy it or whatever, but have it available to you should you want it. It really doesn't cost that much to do. So I was, in the 1970s, I was with the British Film Institute when I was living in London. And I had access to all of their nitrate films. Wow. Nitrate stock, highly volatile. But BFI, British Film Institute, recognized film as an art form long before AFI, American Film Institute, did. So they recognized film as an art form. So they preserved American films that were not available, that were gone, missing in action, unavailable in this country, did not exist. Yet they had original nitrate prints that they thought to preserve. So in those days, I had access to all that stuff. I was doing a lot of research on a British film comedy, and I was lecturing on American film comedy. Wow. And I had access to all those nitrate prints. I would have to make an appointment, private screening for nitrate prints, great British comedians like Lupino Lane and people like that who you probably haven't heard of. But those films existed, and I would get to watch them on nitrate prints, but I had to have a projectionist and a fireman present in the projection booth in order for me to have a private screening of these films. Incredible stuff. But again, that stuff needs to be preserved, and then it needs to be transferred onto a more sustainable stock. So they thought 16 millimeter film was the way to go, safety film. But safety film degenerates too. And then they go to digital. Well, everything degenerates. So, you've got to make sure that you keep transferring it onto whatever the current medium is in order to preserve it.
Interesting.
And it takes a lot of labor and love. It's not cost effective to do. But
Yes.
it's important to do.
Yes. For preservation.
Well, and people, artists, their life's work needs, we need to respect that and preserve it when it can be preserved. Because a lot of the vaudeville stuff, that's gone. It was never filmed. Some of it was, and so the ones that were, make sure you preserve that stuff because the only available example of that artist's work, a lifetime of work. Imagine if we only had one Renoir or one Rembrandt, and the rest had been destroyed. It's the same. It's an art form.
An art form, life work.
You bet.
And you also had mentioned in music, moving from film to music, and Michael Feinstein has the songbook. And
Great American Songbook Foundation. I first met Michael Feinstein in 1977. I've told this story elsewhere, and if you've heard it, stop me. But when I was doing that improv comedy show with Robin Williams back in L.A., in this little converted ballet studio, Michael Feinstein was our substitute piano player. When we couldn't get the real piano player, we got Michael. Now, that sounds, detrimental. No, it is not, because he was a genius even then. He was performing in Beverly Hills at the time, doing Great American Songbook then in 1977 with passion, with knowledge, and with expertise. And with love. He was performing and keeping that music alive then, and has been doing it ever since, and now in a greatly expanded way, thank goodness. But the Great American Songbook is some of the greatest composers and greatest lyricists, music and poetry, that have ever lived. And it's a uniquely American genre. And so this is part of our legacy. This is part of who we are. And it was performed during World War I, World War II, during, even Vietnam, all through our history, this music has been alive. And it is a recording of emotion, of people, and of the circumstances of the time. Songs during the Depression, "We're in the money," to keep people up when they were down. There's a purpose to the music. And so the Great American Songbook, to me, is a sacred thing. And I've spent my life, like Michael has, but, Michael has done it in a much more grandiose way. I've done it in a much more humble way. But I've spent my life living it and preserving it and performing it, And that's what I'll do here in Feinstein's, July 22nd. I will be doing that right here in this wonderful room that Michael has created, a perfect room for audience and performer to come together. It's intimate, but it's not so intimate that it's uncomfortable. It's very comfortable, and the food is great, and the ambiance is terrific. There's not a bad seat in the house. They say there's limited view. Forget the limited viewing. You can see from everywhere in here. It's a great room. He has done it. It reminds me of the rooms that I grew up performing in New York when I was 16. It is the real classic supper club, cabaret, nightclub, showroom. This is it. There are so few of them left. I think none of them. There were a few of them, like Cinegrill. I played in Hollywood, which was opposite Grauman's Chinese Theater. I followed Buddy Greco, and I followed Joan Rivers there with my LA band years ago. But this is reminiscent of that kind of a club. It's a great place, great place. And the people that are brought in to perform here, not just me, but you look at the schedule of performers here, my gosh. I mean, you'd be crazy not to subscribe if they take subscriptions. It's just a great place. So come and see me, but come and see whoever's performing here. You're going to have a wonderful time.
Well, thank you. I'm planning on it.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thank you, Wayne. And that's it for this episode of the Omnibus Show. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Hotel Carmichael, and we're shooting today at Feinstein's, where Wayne will be here on July 22nd. We look forward to being with you on our next episode.
If you enjoyed this program, please like, share, and subscribe to continue the conversation. For the Omnibus Show newsletter, please sign up at theomnibusshow.com.